you're running a business or you have a major role because you're very good at what you do and you're very passionate about those things and you have a good way of explaining that and connecting with people, right? You find the stuff that is natural and you really lean into that because it's easy, right? You don't have to be somebody else. So many people, when they get into content creation, I think the problem is, and this is especially a podcast problem, but I think it happens everywhere, is, oh, I'm online. Now I need to be this influencer. I need to be this different personality. I'm like a wrestler version of myself. And you do not have to be that.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffman.
Entrepreneurs, we're always told as business owners and leaders to create more content, connect with your customers, and get out there and promote your brand and what you're doing. And yet we sometimes wonder, how do we do that? And today we're sitting down with Vince Quinn. He's the creative director of SBX Productions. Vince, welcome to the episode.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Love having you here. You're a Philly boy. I lived in Philly for about 10 years or so. I actually have a couple of offices down in that market near the King of Prussia area, actually, is where we are. And I understand you're more towards the downtown. And I'll tell you what, we have a couple of executives in that business that produce a good amount of content, but yet are always wondering, what should I be putting out there? And how do I connect with my customers? I'm not comfortable in front of video. And so a lot of times it's being outsourced or they're using AI generation tools to get stuff out there. When you talk to CEOs and business owners about connecting with their customers digitally, where are some of the places you start?
Yeah, start with the things you're most passionate about, right? The things that you talk about day to day, the things that you've got opinions about that are relevant to your business. You're running a business or you have a major role because you're very good at what you do and you're very passionate about those things and you have a good way of explaining that and connecting with people, right? You find the stuff that is natural and you really lean into that because it's easy, right? You don't have to be somebody else. So many people, when they get into content creation, I think the problem is, and this is especially a podcast problem, but I think it happens everywhere, is, oh, I'm online. Now I need to be this influencer. I need to be this different personality. I'm like a wrestler version of myself. And you do not have to be that. And people don't really want that, right? Like, I don't want to work with a wrestler. I want to work with a professional who knows what they're doing. And so just convey those messages. If you're giving me good information and you're doing that in a way that I trust you and think that you can help me out, I will call you. And I think a lot of people are like that, but we get so sucked up into this idea of virality and being these big personalities and making so much money through views and sponsorships that, like, we just lose the plot that you're a business owner, you're an expert, you have all these great skills and opinions, and you just need to let those things shine.
You know, many people gather strong opinions on things after failure. And that's where some of the best learning lessons have come. Where did you fail and what did you learn to come to have this conviction?
So where did I fail? How much time you got, guys? I started in sports talk radio. That was where I began my career. I spent 10 years in Philly doing sports talk radio. So that was a brutal business. And in terms of building a brand and talking to people and authenticity, because sports radio is full of wrestlers, and I did not want to be that kind of guy. So trying to build a brand in that environment was something that ultimately I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be somebody that I thought was inauthentic, and it hurt my career. I wasn't able to blow up the way other people did because I was sincere in my opinions rather than trying to poke the bear and get people agitated for the sake of engagement. So it wasn't a good format for me. And I had spent 10 years putting everything in my life into that. Nights, holidays, weekends, overnights, all that kind of stuff. And translating into business, I've built so many good relationships with people and good client relationships with people who stick around with me because I'm just honest with them about what they've got going on. I'm very simple in the kind of advice that the way you should speak to people, like we were talking about earlier, just be authentic, talk about what you know, because otherwise people tune you out. There are wrestlers that are committed to wrestling. So if you're not going to be a professional wrestler, don't get in the ring. And you need to understand that. It's finding that voice, seeing it in a public level in such an aggressively negative venue like sports talk radio in the peak of Twitter. That shaped me a lot. And then just working with different shows and seeing what works and what doesn't. A lot of shows struggle because they don't know what their voice is because they're talking about things that aren't them. They're just always trying to find that other thing that they think other people might like. And it just overcomplicates things. Once you find that simplicity, everything is just easier day in and day out.
Help me reconcile these two messages of yours. One is, hey, be authentic, be sincere. You can be successful that way. But at the same time, in your failure story is, hey, because I wasn't willing to be a wrestler personality, I didn't blow up. And it's because I was sincere. So that could be taken as, hey, so make sure you're sincere because you're not going to get a lot of traction. That's how to win. Like, how do I reconcile these two, what look like conflicting messages?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And it's two different approaches to content, right? One is entertainment. So for entertainment, you're competing with all these different things that are just for the sake of, is this interesting to watch? Does this capture my attention? And the whole approach for that, you have to be bigger and bombastic. And it's not necessarily about substance as much as it's how can I manipulate people in different ways to get them to think that I'm worth listening to with the millions of things that are trying to take their attention, all the different streaming and music and YouTube and every social account that exists. From a business standpoint, right, that's a different thing. I could get people's attention, but am I going to be able to retain them as clients? Am I building trust with them as clients to support my network? It's just a whole different approach when you're talking about advertising and marketing versus just brand building in the entertainment world.
Give me more. So I got the one side is entertainment at times can lack substance, and there's some conscious manipulation of people in how someone's personality might show up. So if you're not on the entertainment side, you're on what side? And give me a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so it's business building and marketing, right? It's more traditional in that sense. So what you're doing is for a lot of people I work with, they're entrepreneurs, right? So in a lot of cases, solopreneurs. So you are the business, everything happens through you, everything is about you. So you have to find ways to build relationships with people that are meaningful, get them to stay as clients, get them to become super fans and refer you. So they don't want all the bombast and nonsense. They want a lot of it's practical advice. It's things that actually grow the business. It's things that they have concrete value is really what you're looking for. So when you build yourself that way, it is a different approach because it is a different message. It's a different kind of relationship because when you're presenting, I give an aggressive sports opinion, right? I'm talking about a certain coach. They should be fired or one player is better than the other player. I'm not doing it with the intent of, do I have solid foundation for the opinion? Am I somebody you should listen to for analysis? It's, am I getting you upset enough that you're going to tweet at me, follow me, complain about me, place a phone call, and you might not even like me. You know what I mean? I'm using my opinions to not represent me personally because I'm not interested actually in what you think of me. I just care if you're listening or not. So that authenticity and that difference of relationship with your listener, that is the major difference.
So I'm curious, Vince, why isn't it just good enough now if we just talk about the business side of things and the business building side? Why isn't it just okay to provide a really good product or service and that will help you expand? Why do you have to now? Why has this changed? When did it change? Why did it change? Why is it important for entrepreneurs to be more present digitally where their customers may be perusing LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever? Why is that so important versus just do a good job, provide good service and product to your customers and your business will grow? Why isn't that good enough anymore?
Yeah, it depends, right? If you're in the kind of business where people naturally come to you and you get so many referrals and you fill everything out, you might not need to do anything digital. My father-in-law, for example, he's an accountant, runs his own practice. He's solo. He's been doing that for 30 years. Never had to advertise in a day in his life. He just gets all these referrals. Everything is good. So there are exceptions to that, which is great. For me, like I'm in podcast production. It is incredibly niche. So I have to find ways to get out there and make sure that I'm getting this kind of awareness. And social media is such an affordable way to do that if you do it right. So if you know the different ways to get your content, for me, I'm all about repurposing, right? So I use a podcast. I turn that into a newsletter through the transcript. I can turn that into social media posts through the reels. I'm getting those posts and through a scheduler, I can put that on TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all at the same time through one post. So like being able to do that in a simple way, it saves you so much in terms of the advertising, but can get you such big reach, or at the very least, just remind people that you exist within your network. The amount of times just in the past 3 months, I've really launched my show for myself. I've been working on other businesses for so long. I launched my own show in October, and the number of referrals I'm getting from people in network that I've known for however many years that aren't even clients, but they're referring people to me because they're seeing me on their feed all the time has been pretty significant. I've gotten like 6 referrals in the last 3 months just from people who see me on LinkedIn. So that's the kind of impact that you can get. But again, there's a lot of thought that goes into that, and you don't want to bury yourself because I think for a lot of people, that work of social media is exhausting. It's not natural. And so how do you do that in a way that translates?
Yeah. You know what's I found interesting, Vince, is if I was on your podcast and you were interviewing me about my business or what I do, I'd feel so comfortable answering your questions and providing some of my expertise and so on and so forth. But if you asked me to just grab my phone right now in portrait style and record myself on a short video for YouTube or Instagram, I'd puke all over myself. I wouldn't even know how to start, and it would be garbage and it wouldn't be authentic. And it looked like I'm reading probably because I was from a teleprompter. It just wouldn't feel like me. And I think a lot of business people feel like they have to be that, and they're not. That's one spot where I think that podcast guesting and podcasting with Rich has really benefited me is I'm able to just talk authentically with other business people in a natural environment that then can be repurposed on social media without me feeling like I'm trying to be some, influencer on Instagram or something. Do you see that a lot?
Oh, yeah, completely. I think podcasts are great for that, for getting it out of people, because part of it is you get in the rhythm, right? Like, even if you come in nervous, like, I'm naturally full of anxiety at times, right? So I'll get into certain situations and I get tense and I get shaky. And then after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I settle down and everything's cool. And when you're doing a 40-minute interview, like, that is great, right? You get comfortable, you get to know each other, you build some trust. Like, those kinds of things are awesome. So having that opportunity in that way, yeah, because picking up the phone, it's not natural. I don't even like it. I don't like for posting for me in my free time, like anything outside of work. I don't like posting on Instagram because it doesn't feel natural to me. So I don't want to do it. But when I'm doing everything with work, it's okay. I have all these different opinions about different ways to go about planning a show or picking the kinds of topics and finding alignment with your business and how you incorporate funnels or whatever it is. There's so many things that go into it, and I can talk for days about it. So that's easy to do.
Yeah.
But we take it from the podcast because same thing, I'm in flow. It is a more natural rhythm, and just picking up and being a performer on the dot and then dropping it again. It's just not easy to do. It takes a lot of time. It's very hard work.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Rich, but it certainly has helped me a lot because I wouldn't be creating 1/20th of the content, if not 1/100th of the content, if it wasn't for the podcasting, because it really helps take an authentic message that I truly feel that I'm communicating naturally with an audience and with interviewers like yourself or with Rich. So I see that a lot. And I think one of the other areas I see people conflicted with is information overload. People don't listen to anything for more than 3 seconds, but you made a 30-second clip. And there's so much content out there. Now there's AI generated content. It's not even real. And it's just, okay, is this even worth it? 30 people are going to listen to this. What am I doing? What would you say to those people that maybe are skeptical about just this information overload society that's going on now? And maybe we do a podcast and not enough people listen to it, and maybe it's not worth it. So I'm going to quit that. I'm going to try something new. What would you say to those people? Because I've certainly been there at times myself.
Yeah, look, making content like that and having it be the basis for your marketing strategy, or like a major part of your marketing strategy, especially when you're limited on resources and you don't feel comfortable doing it, it's not the right way to go, right? Like, advertising, that is the nice thing about it. There are so many people out there that have good platforms, that have great engagement, high listener counts, like all the things that you would want in a show. Just partner with them. Like, there are ways to advertise. So if you want to partner with specific shows, you want to do that on YouTube or a podcast. If you want to work with different influencers, especially if you're a local business and you have local influencers that have that kind of audience, like, you can let other people do that work. And all you need to do is initially build the relationship and let them get the word out for you. Or even on the traditional sense, scrolling through Instagram, the amount of people that I see through advertisements, like different coaches that have a lead magnet and trying to build in business that way. It's one ad. You put in the time to make that one ad. You just pay however much you want to run the campaign for as long as you want. And you cycle those things out. Not everybody needs to be the leading scorer on a basketball team. Sometimes you come off the bench, you play 3 minutes, and that's all you need to do. And that's great, right? Be the advertiser. Don't be the star of the show. Just get in the right audiences and let other people drive the train.
When you said you got 6 referrals in the last 3 months, sorry to, if you don't mind, put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
Of those 6, did all 6 of them convert to clients?
So a lot of those people are waiting because, for example, a guy I talked to today. So one of them, I'm expecting to be a client as of now. And for me to be transparent as well, like, the hit rate as a podcaster, as a podcast producer, it's a very long tail typically. And that's a problem that I'm trying to solve, actually, because it's so hard to get a lot of people to commit to and understand the value of the investment in a podcast because it's a long-term thing, right? I try to manufacture so there's easy wins up front. Hey, your marketing is going to get easier. You're going to write articles faster, things like that. But not everybody is willing to make the investment. A lot of times it takes a couple of months. My average turnaround might be 4 or 5 months sometimes between somebody being initially interested and them coming through. But other things are people who the guy I spoke to earlier today, he's starting a marketing agency. He's been with the company for a while, build up his own clients. Now he's getting ready to leave his job in the next week or two. Once he does that, he wants me to be his referral partner for his podcasts for all the different clients that he's got, different coaches, foundations, that kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of my stuff is a slow play, unfortunately. But I would say out of those, so yeah, one, I'm expecting to convert very soon. That one, the marketing agency, probably in the next 6 months. I think I'll see some real return on that. And then if one or two out of the other four come through, that is a win for me based on my history and something I'm working on getting a better hit rate with.
You said it was a long-term thing. What do you mean by long-term? What is that? And like, that's different depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, and I would be curious as much as you guys have perspective on this as well. Like a lot of times, if you don't have a major built-in audience when you're getting started with the podcast, you got to build that audience, right? So it's not just getting the show out there and putting it into your different marketing channels, mentioning it in your newsletter, mentioning it on social media, having it on your website, in conversations with people, getting guests on the show. But it's also being a guest on other shows, being on the right shows that also have audiences. There's so many things that go into building a podcast, I think, to one degree, to the level that people expect, right? So many people, when they look at a podcast, they want it to be this big entertainment vehicle that has massive downloads. Most people expect to monetize right away off of their podcast through sponsorships, but the amount of money they would make from a sponsorship or whether or not that's realistic, a lot of times it's not. If you're going to monetize, you have to do it because you have something with your business that you can sell that you are converting people into, and that's your return on the investment. So if you want to make it so that just your podcast is big enough that it's naturally bringing in people all the time because your funnels are great, you've built the trust, you're constantly bringing people into the show, and you do a good job with what you do, then that takes time for a lot of people. So that's what I mean with that long-term investment. And you have to have a lot of commitment to be willing to understand what that is, put in the work to do it, and to have a good show.
What is it of the marketing approach that you work with your clients on that you're using yourself and really focused on right now? Is there kind of seasons, I'm sure, for everything? What's the season you're in and what you're focused on for your business?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is simplicity and message, right? I help business podcasters. That is the biggest thing that I do. That is what I'm all about. I spend all my time talking about it, all of our clips, our newsletter, our website. I built a quiz recently to help business podcasters to, hey, here's 4 major areas of your business. If you're having a hard time and trying to figure out what your issue is, you don't know where to go, take the quiz. That might help you get in the right direction. So like that kind of alignment, like relentless alignment where my audience is my customer, that is the biggest thing for sure. And that's the thing I'm preaching so much to all these different coaches and things, because sometimes they start a show. For example, I have a client. So she is a business coach and she does very well, has a bunch of clients. She just brought in a whole new team, PR people, additional marketing people, social media person, like all this stuff. And we're all working together. But sometimes her message, her main client is the CEOs, the C-suite. Those are the kinds of people that hire her and they're the client. But some of her content, like different articles and things that she's written, have been geared towards the employee. And when that's not your client, unless you're talking through the lens of, okay, as an executive, here's ways you impact your employees, then you're really missing the mark. Like you need to talk to those CEOs and the people in the C-suite all the time. That is your audience. So trying to find that kind of, again, simplicity, uniformity, alignment, that is the biggest thing that I'm preaching more than anything right now.
Vince, I want to ask a little bit of a selfish personal question. So we've been recording our podcast. We're about to go on our 5th season, a little under 300 episodes. We've been recording every single week since we started. We've never missed a Monday.
Wow.
In a few years here. So going into our 4.5 years, 5th season, and truly enjoying it. Don't see end in sight. Love sharpening our own saw. We have this concept that if we're interested in this topic, I'm sure our listeners are. Otherwise, they should go listen to another podcast, as Rich would say. And here we are chugging along. And we see no end in sight. We want to keep this going because we see a lot of value in it. But at what point is that okay? Meaning, at what point is it okay that we are seeing the value? We know people that are listening and seeing the value, but our audience doesn't have 1 million people listening to it, or we're not selling advertising spots. We're not even looking for advertisers for that matter. The podcast doesn't necessarily on its own make any money, and that's okay for us. But at what point is that not okay? And we're both ambitious entrepreneurs too, but we've never looked at it that way. Is that okay?
Yeah, if you guys are okay, that's okay, right? It's all about what you want to get out of it. There's so many different shows. For example, I was on a show maybe a week and a half ago, And he interviews all sorts of different people, different life experiences. Like before he interviewed me, he interviewed somebody who was caught in an avalanche and had every bone in their body broken and just talked about what that experience was for an hour and a half, which is incredibly fascinating. And he wants to grow that show, but he knows it's an entertainment vehicle and he knows he's not putting a whole lot into it. He just likes having the conversations. Podcasts are an easy way to meet people like that. And it just creates that environment to get the conversations. He's just along for the ride right now and seeing where it goes. So it's always a personal choice, right? I think the biggest thing is podcasting takes up so much time to schedule all of this stuff. You have to sit in and do the recordings, preparing for the recordings, editing everything, posting everything. It's a lot of work. And if it just gets to the point where the work is too much or you just don't enjoy it anymore, then yeah, like that's when you call it. But that's the thing. It's up to everybody of what you want to get out of it, what makes you happy, and what are the goals.
Yeah, exactly. When you talked about it being a long-term thing, I view this as a little bit too, there's a long tail to this and continue to perfect our skills and our communication skills and our knowledge and expand our network and a whole bunch of other things. But I guess the question would be when you see podcasts like this, a business podcast that's out there and being consistent and out there, what are some big rocks that typically tip a podcast from, yeah, those guys were consistently going for 4 years and now all of a sudden their audience has doubled or tripled and they're getting a little more traction. What causes that tipping point in your mind with podcasts in our area of maturity in terms of years?
Yeah. So one of the things I would say is if there's a change in message, if there's, let's say, sometimes a lot of business shows can be pretty broad, right? So it's going to be the mental element and it's going to be different things with finances and it's going to be how you balance the work and life stuff. So there's so many different ways that it goes. A lot of times it might be, like I said, that alignment. Hey, we're going to retool the show a little bit. At some point, it's not going where we want it to. And so having that very concentrated, like reimagining of the show is a lot of times something that can be a catalyst because the current thing as it's been going, like it gets you to a certain point, but it hits a ceiling. Another thing would be guesting. So if you're bringing on people all the time, that's one thing, but being a guest on other shows. And what are those shows? Because I mentioned it earlier, but there's plenty of shows out there that they take guests on and that's great. But if you're only talking to 20 people, are you really growing your show for all the time that you're committing? Finding ways to get on better shows would also be using the right tools to find Rephonic. I'll just put it out there. There's something called Rephonic, which is an eye opener. It's a great tool. And it gives you this approximation of how different shows are doing, the kinds of people that they have in their audience. And I use that all the time just because I don't want to go on a show with 10 people. And it's not that I don't respect that person or anything or think it would be a good conversation, but I'm doing it for marketing in part. So you want to be on shows that have good things going for them, have the right intention, have the right kind of audience, and to be able to focus that way is going to give you that kind of growth that you're looking for. You're in bigger, better audiences.
Yeah. So Rich and I enjoy this game where we sit down at a bar and we say, okay, what's the one app you're using on your phone right now that you don't think I have? And we play that game and learn about different things. I never heard of Rephonic, but if I was to ask you that question, not necessarily your phone, but what are a couple other tools? There's so many tools out there that exist for help creating content. What are a couple of the ones that you are actually actively using that you would recommend people look into?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing for the tool that I spend the most time with, which has had the biggest impact and I think is easy enough for people to get a hang of, is building a custom GPT. I am super into the custom GPT. I've got one for my business. I've loaded a bunch of information into it. And it's great because there's so many different sources of information that are out there. There's all sorts of free guides and books you can download. I've got all these materials from my business, transcripts from my episodes. Like I put all of that stuff in there. So by the time I talk to my bot, it's got every newsletter I've written for a year and a half. It's got every podcast that I've done and all the points that I've made there. It's got lead magnets that I've created. So it understands me and my business intimately. And from that, when I'm trying to solve different problems, I can go to that. Like I redid my website just a couple of weeks ago. I was redoing all the different copy and trying to just improve the messaging across the board. I went to my GPT, was able to write a lot of stuff in my voice. I edited that stuff as I needed to. But simple, clean, easy. The time that I have saved making content and just writing email, whatever it is, like it has been infinitely better. And it's all because of a custom GPT that I put a lot of time into and continue to put time into.
Yeah, not to be confused with the generic chat GPT, right? To program your own coach bot that's programmed with all your stuff is huge. So Vince, this was an awesome conversation. How can people get more information, learn more about you, or seek out more resources from you?
Yes, I have my own podcast. It is called It's Not Just Talking because people so many times have said, oh, it's a podcast, it's just talking, right? And that drives me crazy. So it's not just talking. with me, Vince Quinn. You can find that Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It's also on YouTube. And SBXProductions.com if you want to take the quiz, if your podcast is struggling, or you just want to see what areas you can improve. That'll give you a bird's eye view on it. So SBXProductions.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks, Vince.
Thanks, guys.
Stay tuned as John and Rich unpack today's conversation.
The Custom GPT, John, are you doing any of that? Are you, I think now you're on the paid for version. Are you doing anything like uploading your book and a bunch of your work and then able to ask a question? Are you doing that?
Rich, I love the question. Yes, I am. I'm on the paid version. I think only on the paid version can you create your custom GPTs that I know of. And the information you load does not train the LLM. So as you load up your information, it's proprietary to you and they don't use it to train their models. I'll give you a couple of use cases. I won't give you the same use case that Vince just gave, but I've uploaded my book, a bunch of transcripts of things I've done, articles I've written, everything else. And if I ask it a question, it will respond back to me in my own words or language. Or if I say, hey, give me a 30-second video post in what I should say, boom, it'll spit out exactly what I should say using my cash flow as cash is king verbiage or whatever. So it's really cool. But I'll give you a use case that I blew a customer away with yesterday. I had a call with a customer and they need to create a recruiting and hiring SOP for a certain position in their company. And they don't have one. And I spoke with this business owner a couple of weeks ago and I said, hey, in the next couple of weeks, why don't you create an outline for this and we'll talk in a couple of weeks. And we got on the phone yesterday. I was like, I haven't started that yet. I'm a little stuck, whatever. And so on the call, I said, just tell me, what are the steps? And we walked through the steps from recruiting to placing an ad to all the way through offer. I said, okay, perfect. I said, do you have an avatar of who you're looking for? Oh yeah, we have that. I said, well, send that to me too. So he sent that to me and I said, do you have any other information? Oh, the job description. Okay, perfect. Send me the job description. And I have a whole bunch of other information on their company. So I created a custom GPT for their company. I uploaded it a whole bunch of information about who they are, their company, their core values, or this or that, the avatar, the job description. I wrote in the process and I said, draft up a flow chart of the hiring process for this company. Give me the standard operating procedures for each box of the flow chart and give me a scorecard for every process where they need to score the candidate all the way through the hiring decision. Within minutes, it popped out an entire document. I copied it, put it into Google Docs, cleaned it up a little bit, sent it to them about an hour and a half after our call. They were blown away. They were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I said, look, it's not perfect, but you would read the scorecard and it almost was evaluating the person at the resume stage, at the phone call stage, at the interview stage, at the hiring stage. And it really provided them the criteria to evaluate a candidate. And I did that in an hour and a half. No, it didn't take me an hour and a half, just to be clear, an hour and a half following the call with them. It probably took me like 20 or 30 minutes to do. And it wasn't perfect, but now it has the foundation for them to go edit and modify, and boom, in the next week, they'll have their document. And you can do that for so many different things in your business. If you train the model on who you are and what you're doing and your particular business, you could train it on creating agreements for you. And obviously then you take the agreement and send it to your lawyer and say, hey, here's a 90% drafted agreement, please clean it up. Because you don't want to not have it go through your lawyer. But there's certain things like that just accelerate the pace to which you can actually do things and move your business forward that I'm blown away with.
You and I are certainly, I believe, we're not in the entertainment podcast area. We're definitely
speak for yourself, buddy.
Yeah. I don't think you're that entertaining, and neither am I. It's obviously in the business building side. We don't come on and act like we're anything other than who we are, and we leave in if there's we challenge each other, and we're certainly on the business building side of things where we try to deliver substance and we try to get the right guests on. And we've been saying for some time, we'd love to get referrals of who would be a great guest from our listeners. Feel free to reach out to us and we'll reach back out to that person who you think would be a great guest.
Yeah, absolutely. We do count on our community to continue to move this podcast forward and actually talk about things on this podcast that are meaningful to you. So as Rich said, please reach out. We look forward to talking to you every single week, and we'll see you here again next week. Thanks for joining us.